So, folks, you're in your home, you're cozy, you're warm. You're baking cookies. But are you using a gas oven? Are you living in a home with painted walls or with wallpaper? Or have you recently bought copier paper? Well, guess what? All of those things are slowly killing you. Sorry to let you know that. And you might be like, how on earth could that possibly be true? And, well, unfortunately, our regulatory agencies have been hamstrung by intensive lobbying from across, you know, the capital class sector. And the EPA has been dragging its feet for decades now to ban the use of formaldehyde in a lot of substances and products. And we are now left with apparently a colossal problem because formaldehyde, for those of you who don't know, most of you probably are familiar with it because it was used for like suspending different types of like organic tissues, like fetal pigs in your middle school science class. Stuff like that. You might remember that pungent smell, right? And unfortunately, that's not all it's used for, and the United States makes billions of pounds of it every year for industrial purposes. So let's take a look. ProPublica doing some excellent reporting here. Please support ProPublica. Not a sponsor, but like they do such good work. Formaldehyde causes more cancer than any other toxic air pollutant. Little is being done to curb the risk. And yeah, it's the most deadly air contaminant that we deal with. So let's learn a little bit here. Yes, exactly, Charles. Just like leaded gasoline and asbestos. Yep. And very similarly to lead, we've known that it's dangerous for decades. Lead in paint, for example, is known to be dangerous and was phased out of use in other countries across the world, but it took 70 years longer for it to be banned in the United States because the paint industry lobbied to keep it in there. God. This article is disturbing, to say the least. It's worth a read. I'm going to link it in chat here for you guys. But there's a lot of disturbing stuff going on with formaldehyde. Let's go here. Which part did I want to highlight first? The EPA is moving ahead after setting aside some of its own scientists' conclusions about how likely the chemical is to cause myeloid leukemia, a potentially fatal blood cancer that strikes an estimated 29,000 people in the United States each year. The result is that even the EPA's alarming estimates of cancer risks vastly underestimate as much as fourfold the chances of formaldehyde causing cancer. Meaning that the EPA's own findings already show that it's the deadliest air contaminant. But even those findings might actually be several times higher. Because it turns out breathing formaldehyde not good for you. Let's see here. The agency said it made this decision because its estimate for myeloid leukemia was too uncertain to include. The EPA noted that the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, which the agency paid to review its report, agreed with its decision not to include myeloid leukemia in its cancer risk. But 4 former government scientists with experience doing statistical analysis of health harms told ProPublica that the myeloid leukemia risk calculation was sound. One said the risk was even greater than the agency's estimate. Jennifer Ginott, one of the EPA scientists who spent years calculating the leukemia risk, said there is always uncertainty around estimates of health effects of chemicals. The real problem, she said, was cowardice. In the end, they chickened out, said Janat, who retired in 2017 after 26 years working at the EPA. It was kind of heartbreaking. Yeah, guess what government agency Trump wants to defund? Guess what government agency was largely rendered toothless thanks to the overturning of the Chevron doctrine, which basically allows any affected corporation to sue the U.S. government individually over individual regulations, and they can do so retroactively. It's great. Such a good system. God. And yeah. The EPA has also retreated from some of its own findings on the other health effects of formaldehyde, which include asthma in both children and adults, other respiratory ailments, including reduced lung function and reproductive harms, such as miscarriages and fertility problems. In a draft report expected to be finalized this month, the agency identified many instances in which formaldehyde posed a health threat to the public, but questioned whether most of those rose to a level the agency needed to address. In response to questions from ProPublica, the EPA wrote in an email that the report was not final and that the agency was in the process of updating it. Still, if the past is any guide, even the limited efforts of President Joe Biden's administration are all but guaranteed to hit a dead end after Donald Trump is inaugurated. And one of the longer-running attempts to restrict a dangerous chemical in American history will be set back yet again. Because, guys, we've known that formaldehyde is dangerous to inhale for a very long time, right? Like, the work was done on this initially in... Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see, ProPublica used a 2020 analysis. However, the history of this, yeah, they've been trying to limit exposure to the public of formaldehyde since the 1980s. Reagan's head of the EPA, John Todhunter, wound up torpedoing efforts to curtail formaldehyde in air and ventilation in such a manner that it actually ended his career. He wound up having to resign because he argued that it was perfectly safe to inhale formaldehyde, which is insane. It's not good to inhale it at all. And you want to know what? This is the really telling part. A House investigation later revealed that he had met with chemical industry representatives, including a lobbyist from the Formaldehyde Institute, a thing that actually exists. It exists, and it exists to tell people that formaldehyde is perfectly safe. Just before making his decision. So, he met with a bunch of lobbyists who paid him off in order to say that formaldehyde is absolutely perfectly safe. And he lied, clearly, and everyone knew he lied, and so he had to resign. That being said, they tried again to limit formaldehyde in 1991 under George H.W. Bush. And EPA was finally able to label it a probable human carcinogen. And they said, well, it might cause a really rare type of cancer in the throat. And then fast forward to 2003, showed that factory workers exposed to high levels of formaldehyde were 3.5 times more likely to develop myeloid leukemia than workers exposed to low levels of formaldehyde. Having human data showing an effect like that is a rare thing, said Janat, the former EPA statistician and toxicologist. You want to seize that opportunity. But in 2004, the work of the EPA hit another roadblock. Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, a Republican, of course, persuaded the EPA to delay the update of the formaldehyde report until the National Cancer Institute released the results of the study they had underway. Then, in 2006, after Hurricane Katrina, remember all of the trailers that people were put into for temporary housing after Katrina? They wound up having difficulties breathing and having eye irritation and nosebleeds due to formaldehyde exposure. And you want to know where they were getting that formaldehyde exposure from? It's from natural gas. The burning of natural gas lets off a number of chemicals that are deeply bad for human beings to inhale. And you know what doesn't have great ventilation? Trailers that people are put in as temporary shelters after a natural disaster. So basically, our stoves and our heaters are killing us if they use natural gas. In 2009, the Obama administration, the EPA was about to release that formaldehyde report. Remember the one that they started writing in 2003 after over 20 years of efforts to eliminate it? They started the report in 2003. However, David Vitter, a U.S. senator, also a Republican, who incidentally, and I'm sure this has nothing to do with anything, received donations from chemical companies and a formaldehyde lobbyist, held up the confirmation of an EPA nominee. He agreed to approve the nomination in exchange for an additional review of the formaldehyde report by a panel of the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering and Medicine. The outside review found problems with clarity and transparency of the methods used in the EPA report and recommended that, in its next version, the EPA employ vigorous editing and explain its arguments more clearly. But the EPA would not issue that next version for more than a decade. So the report that they tried to put out in 2004 wound up getting delayed for almost 20 years because of lobbyists, because the government has legalized companies to bribe politicians. And not just in an abstract way. They have made it legal for companies that are actively poisoning you to lobby the government to keep it legal to poison you. This is why Republicans want you dead. This is why we talk about that. It's not a meme. It's because Republicans uphold this method of corruption. And granted, now Democrats do as well in a lot of cases, but it's more pronounced among Republicans. They uphold this corruption that allows them to kill you. And they're doing it because by killing you, their company makes more money. That's how that works. They became completely cowardly, Janot said. They were shell-shocked and retreated. And the EPA went about revising its report, it fell behind others around the world in recognizing that formaldehyde causes cancer. The World Health Organization's arm that researches cancer had already concluded in 2006, that's 18 years ago, almost 19 years ago, that the chemical is a carcinogen. 5 years later, scientists with the Department of Health and Human Services found that formaldehyde causes cancer, citing studies linking it to myeloid leukemia. They have known for almost half a century that formaldehyde causes cancer. And they've been trying to ban its use, and it is still legal for these companies to lobby for its unsafe use. It still is not, its use is not curtailed. It's really frustrating, okay? Because formaldehyde is used in paper products, okay? If you have sheets of paper, because of how they are chemically treated, they give off low levels of formaldehyde. They radiate it off, okay? Now, granted, over time that lessens because it's part of the material. However, a more perhaps pressing thing is that it's used in a lot of paints. And over time, that lessens because, the paint settles. However, when it gets warm, the paint gives off more formaldehyde. If your house doesn't have good enough ventilation, you are sometimes breathing in anywhere from 3 to 40 times the amount of formaldehyde you're supposed to you're is safe for you to breathe in. Okay? And that gets so much worse if you factor in natural gas burning in your home. Because a lot of homes have stoves, gas stoves, right? But the vent hood above your gas stove might not be properly set up to actually vent that air outside. Some vents just circulated in the house. In which case, you're just breathing in more formaldehyde. You're Dutch ovening yourself with formaldehyde. Okay? And that's very unsafe. In fact, the single greatest source of formaldehyde in any given home tends to be 2 things. Number 1, stoves that burn natural gas, whether that's the oven or the stovetop, okay? That's the number 1. And the number 2 are connected garages where people leave their car running to warm it up, That fills your garage with formaldehyde. Also, it fills it with, stuff that will kill you if you continue breathing it in. So carbon monoxide, not particularly good to breathe in. Don't do that. But yeah. Yeah, in a lot of that stuff, it's no good. It's no good. Regulation is needed to take formaldehyde out of a lot of products, or at least as much products as possible. There are probably going to be some things that continue to use formaldehyde, but another really big, another not big, but contributor to formaldehyde within homes is cardboard. Cardboard gives off formaldehyde. The glue in a lot of glues have a lot of formaldehyde. So, it's bad. All right, let's continue looking here. One of the new Trump appointments to the EPA was David Dunlap, a chemical engineer who, as the director of environmental regulatory affairs for Koch Industries, fucking kill me. I shouldn't say that. They probably want to do that. They'll probably get a tax break if they do. Had tried to persuade the EPA that formaldehyde doesn't cause leukemia. That's right. The guy who's Donald Trump wants to run the EPA is trying to convince everyone that formaldehyde doesn't cause cancer. And it absolutely does. What about cigarettes? Yeah, formaldehyde is in cigarettes too. I mean, a lot of other bad stuff is in cigarettes. Don't smoke, kids. Coke's subsidiary, Georgia Pacific, made formaldehyde and many products that emit it. Georgia Pacific has since sold its chemicals business to Bakelite Synthetics. Or Synthetics? Yeah. At the EPA, Dunlap has authority over the division where Janot and other scientists were working on the toxicity report. Ethics rules require federal employees not to participate in matters affecting former clients for 2 years. Dunlap complied with the law, recusing himself in 2018 from work on formaldehyde, but only after taking part in internal agency discussions about its health effects. He signed his recusal paperwork the same day the EPA killed the toxicity report. They killed that report. This, by the way, is what government corruption is. This is where the rubber meets the road. Yeah, they're lobbying to poison you in 100,000 different ways in order to make 10 more cents per person. Let's see. I want to find this. Which part of this am I looking for? I really need to just highlight sections. Really help. Ah, here we go. Found it. Yeah, it's up here. Outdoor air is often suffused with formaldehyde gas from cars, smoke, factories, and oil and gas extraction, sometimes at worrying levels that are predicted to worsen with climate change. Much of the formaldehyde outdoors is also spontaneously found in formed from other pollutants. Invisible to the eye, the gas increases the chances of getting cancer severely in some parts of the country. This year, the EPA released its most sophisticated estimate of the chances of developing cancer as a result of exposure to chemicals indoors, in outdoor air, in every populated census block across the United States. The agency's sprawling assessment shows that among scores of individual air pollutants, formaldehyde poses the greatest cancer risk by far. Right? ProPublica found that in every census block, the risk of getting cancer from exposure to formaldehyde in outdoor air over a lifetime is higher than the limit of 1 incidence of cancer in 1,000,000 people, the agency's goal for air pollutants. That risk level means that if 1,000,000 people in an area are continuously exposed to formaldehyde over 70 years, the chemical would cause at most 1 case of cancer on top of those from other risks people already face. According to ProPublica's analysis of the EPA's 2020 air tox screen data, some 320 million people live in areas of the United States where the lifetime cancer risk from outdoor exposure to formaldehyde is 10 times higher than the agency's ideal. Ten times higher. Okay? That's a lot. That's just in the ambient outdoor air. But it gets worse. In the Los Angeles, San Bernardino, California area alone, some 7.2 million people are exposed to formaldehyde at a cancer risk level more than 20 times higher than the EPA's goal. In an industrial area east of downtown Los Angeles that is home to several warehouses, the lifetime cancer risk from air pollution is 80 times higher. Most of it stemming from formaldehyde. Even those alarming figures underestimate the true danger, as the EPA admits its cancer risk calculation fails to reflect the chances of developing myeloid leukemia. If it had used its own scientists' calculation, the best estimate currently available, according to the agency's August report, the threat of the chemical would be shown to be far more severe. Instead of causing 20 cancer cases for every million people in the United States, formaldehyde would be shown to cause approximately 77. So roughly 4 times higher. So like if you factored in myeloid leukemia here, it's not actually just 80 times higher in this industrial area east of downtown Los Angeles. It's not just 80 times higher. It's 320 times higher, if I'm doing my math correctly. This is a big problem, guys. Using the higher figure to set regulations of the chemical could eventually help prevent thousands of cases of myeloid leukemia, according to ProPublica analysis. As Mary Faltas shows, the diagnosis can upend a life. Faltas, 60, is still sorting through the aftermath of having myeloid leukemia, which she developed in 2019. It's like having a storm come through, she said recently. It's gone, but now you're left with everything else to deal with. It wasn't always clear she'd survive. There are 2 types of myeloid leukemia. Faltas had the more deadly acute form and spent a year and a half undergoing chemotherapy, fighting life-threatening infections, and receiving a bone marrow transplant. Too sick to work, she lost her job as a dental assistant. She and her husband were forced to sell their homes in Apopka, Florida, and downsize to a small condo, a move that took place when she was too weak to pack a box. Yeah. Factor in the EPA's myeloid leukemia calculation, and Faltas has lived in places where cancer risk from formaldehyde alone is 50 to 70 times the agency's total. The EPA's own calculations show that formaldehyde exposure in homes would cause as many as 255 cancer cases in every million people exposed over their lifetimes, and that doesn't reflect the risk of myeloid leukemia. So keep in mind, when we're talking about the area of like east of downtown LA, when we're talking about, 50 to 70 times, etc., or 50 to 70 times the agency's goal, those are for outdoor numbers, guys. Those are just the outdoor formaldehyde numbers. The indoor formaldehyde numbers are significantly higher due to poor ventilation. So, yeah, is that the sound of sharpening guillotine blades in the distance I hear? I mean, honestly, this is kind of indicative of what I'm talking about. More and more people are going to learn about stuff like this, about CEOs who spent their entire lives and careers trying to hide information like this from them in order to kill more innocent people so that they could make more money. More stories are going to come out about that. More people are going to die. More people are going to suffer. And more people are going to find out about the reason for their suffering. And they're going to be really fucking mad about it. I don't know how you hear this story from ProPublica and not get like just like and see red. I just don't see how. How do you learn that there is a group of people who is who are spending millions upon millions of dollars every year to ensure that they can keep poisoning you, your family, your children, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, so that they can make record profits without getting incredibly angry. And the people you need to be angry at are the capital class, the donor class, the rich assholes who buy politicians and buy political favors and have slowly made this country worse in every conceivable way over the last several decades. That's the direction your anger, your ire needs to be directed in, because guess what? The people making this country worse aren't trans kids trying to play high school sports. The people making this country worse are not people using pronouns. Okay? The people making this country worse are the billionaires and 100 millionaires and executives that are constantly throwing you and your loved ones under a literal bus in some cases in order to make more money. And I do not know what world in which we can live sustainably where every day, someone is telling you, no, it's fine. Go out into the world, live your life in your home. Just be okay with like having a 255 times greater likelihood of getting cancer. If someone pointed to like a building and was like, hey, that's the building you go into to get like, 1,000 times more likely to develop cancer, no CEO would go in that building. No rational person would go into that building. And yet every day, lobbyists for these chemical companies show up to Congress in order to make your home into that building. And then people try and downplay it. They go on television, they go on the media circuit, and they get cushy lobbying positions in the industry in order to tell you, no, it's fine that your home, it makes it 1,000 times more likely for you to die of cancer. This is not sustainable. And either this problem gets fixed, or there will be a reckoning of some kind. And that's just how the wheels of the world work. You cannot throw, tens of thousands of people into a wood chipper and not expect people to get angry about it. Just full stop. Can we watch the clip from the guy with the guy from Roundup to underscore the point? Fenry, which clip are you talking about? Corporate plutocracy is what we have, not democracy. Well, unfortunately, we have to make do with whatever shreds of democracy we have left in order to curtail the worst excesses of these ghouls while we build up other types of power. I'm not one of those leftists who think we should abandon electoral reform just because things are bad. Like, do the electoral stuff, but also do, or do other mutual aid organizing. Oh, yeah, we can watch that clip. We can watch that clip real quick. Yeah, here we go. This is an all-time banger.
Last Sunday, we told you about a WHO report that listed several chemicals as potentially cancer-causing, including glyphosate, found in the popular weed killer Roundup. Now, in an interview for an upcoming French documentary, a Canadian scientist has been caught in an Aaron Brockovich-like moment when he's asked to defend that chemical against links to cancer rates in Argentina. Take a look.
I do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you. It's,
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really, but
Not really?
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Okay, so you.
No, but I know
so it's dangerous,
I
right?
know. No, people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly.
Tell the truth.
It's not dangerous to humans. No, it's not.
So you're ready to drink one glass of
No,
glyphosate?
I'm not an idiot.
The clip is being shared widely. But despite headlines like these, the man being interviewed, Patrick Moore, is not a lobbyist for Monsanto, the makers of Roundup. He is, however, known for controversy.
I have somehow evolved into an environmentalist that supports nuclear energy and is somewhat skeptical of human-caused climate change.
Oh, you've evolved into a moron. I see.
Moore spent years early on with Greenpeace Canada, but it no longer recognizes him as a supporter and accuses him of turning into a paid mouthpiece for polluting companies. Meanwhile, glyphosate is still approved for use in this country, though Health Canada says it's looking into the WHO report.
Newsflash, it causes cancer.